Hello, folks. I'd like to talk to you about a World War II veteran that I've interviewed that's just a tough little guy. His name is Bill Ingram. He tried to enlist in the United States Navy in 1941 at 16. They wouldn't let him. They put him in a holding company, and he had to wait until he was a ripe old age of 17. He was assigned to a heavy cruiser called the USS Houston. And if by chance you Google the USS Houston, you'll see there were two of them. He was on the first one. It was sunk in early March, I want to say around the 9th of March 1942. When his ship was sunk, it was surrounded by Japanese vessels in the Battle of the Java Sea. It wasn't much of a battle. There was, I think, an Australian cruiser and his cruiser. And they called it the Galloping Ghost because the Japanese reported it sunk so many times. But it did get sunk on about March 9th of 1942. I was in the Navy in the 60s, and we were taught if your ship was sunk, first thing you do is kick off your shoes because you cannot swim in them. You can't do it. And Bill, being a good young sailor, being 17, doing what he was told to do, kicked off his shoes. For the next 3.5 years, he had no shoes. He had nothing but a loincloth while he worked in monsoon rains hauling dirt. The project he was attached to was called the the Burma Thailand Railroad project. And many people know it as a 1957 movie starring William Holden called The Bridge on the River Kwai. Well, the movie indicated that the Japanese didn't know how to do this or that. Well, they did know how to do everything. They just didn't have the manpower to do it. They got thousands and thousands of prisoners of war and Asians that they had conquered. And they put them out there and they worked them like dogs. Bill tells about working the monsoons. I asked him, I said, did you have to move less dirt? I think they had to move about a cubic yard. And he laughed. He said, absolutely not. He had to move the same amount of dirt. They put it in a blanket on two poles, and they had to carry it from point A to point B, usually up a mountain, and dump it. And if it was raining just in a monsoon and it washed it all out of the blanket, they just had to haul again until they got their quota of dirt up. Some men that were too sick, too injured, they would get what they called ulcers. And because they were in a jungle setting, they would rot everything right through to the bone. You could see the bones in the legs. And of course they had poor food, almost no food. The Japanese would make them still work, so they would go out with a small hammer and they would lay on the ground and just smash rocks all day because they couldn't get up and help build bridges. They would make them smash rocks that they were probably using for the beds of the railroad tracks, the smashed up rocks. Bill talks about how hungry they were. They probably weighed 85, 90 pounds. He said not one thing ever crawled into those camps that crawled out the other side because they ate it. It didn't matter what it was, they ate it. Snakes, rats. And I've asked him, did you eat bugs? Like in a movie with Steve McQueen, Dustin Hoffman and Steve McQueen, where a Papillon, where they ate bugs. Bill said no, he never ate any bugs, but he ate anything else they could get their hands on. If you'd like to learn any more history about Bill, I have about 80 interviews I've done over the last 12 years. And if you would like to purchase any of them or find out any more, I'm going to continue to talk about all 80 of them. I'll talk more about Bill. He has a fascinating history. You can go to lmww2.com. That's my website, lmww2.com, to take a look at what we've done and see some little bits of the videos. I think there's a man named Fred Balo from the 101st Airborne, a man named Bill Russell is on there. He was shot down on a B-24 mission. There's a Marine Corps fighter pilot that's on there. You can take a look at him. Also, if you'd like to talk with me, it'll say how to contact me. If you'd like to give me some ideas on what you'd like to see or hear, let me know, because I've got many stories about these men telling me their favorite weapons, or their least liked weapons, like a rising gun. I had a Marine from Edson's Raiders tell how he hated the rising gun. They threw it into the rivers. They threw them in the rivers. They hated them. But I have many stories that these men have shared with me over 12 years. Again, if you'd like to contact me, go to lmww2.com. About Bill, he's maintained a great sense of humor. He's alive and healthy and tells this story well. All you got to do is Google the USS Houston. There were two of them. Go to the first one. And a good book about it is called The Ghost Ship, because the Japanese Tokyo Rose reported it sunk so many times when it had not been sunk. But it was finally sunk on March 9th of 42. The Japanese were running rampant through the Southwest Pacific, doing anything they wanted. As Admiral Yamamoto, who planned the attack on Pearl Harbor, said, he said that he could run amok, do anything that they wanted to do for 6 months, but then they would awake a sleeping giant. And they awoke us, and we produced and reproduced, and we fought. And we need to understand that this history is huge. It's so important, because our lives would be unrecognizable if that war had been lost by what Tom Brokaw correctly called the greatest generation. These men and women gave us the freedoms. They passed them on to us. Other generations had fought, but World War II was such a huge war for the world. Anyway, take a look at my website and let me know what you'd like to see. Thanks for tuning in tonight, folks, and look in the future for some more ideas and thoughts on World War II. Good night.